Hello and welcome to the TheHagwon September SAT review recap, roundup, whatever you want to call it. I'm Joon and I'm joined today, as always, by the TheHagwon's SAT expert, Deanna Park. Hello, Deanna. How are you doing?
Hi, good, thank you. How are you, Joon?
I'm doing okay. Okay, we're back. It's been only a month. I feel like this is the shortest time we've had between reviews.
Yes, it hasn't. I think it actually hasn't been a full month yet. Yeah.
Well, there is still things to talk about. There was a test. As we've talked about, fall is littered with SAT tests. If you want to learn a little bit more about which one you should take as a high school junior, sophomore, senior, whatever you are, link in the description. I want to start again, as always. Good job if you've taken it. Rest easy. You can relax now. Take a little bit of break. Take time for yourself. Don't compare yourself. Don't react to anything. Partly because, one, we're going to talk a little bit about why you shouldn't try to go online, talk to your friends, and try to compare test questions like you normally might do. Like, did you get the question about translators? What you put as the answer? That kind of stuff is not nearly as helpful as it was in previous times or in previous test administrations. We'll get a little bit more into that. But also, you should take it easy because if you need more help to prepare for October, for November, or any other test outside of that, TheHagwon is releasing our Question Bank Mastery Mode for free for everybody. All you need to do is make an account. That's for your benefit, actually, so we can save which ones you have and have not solved when it comes to problems. 1,000 free SAT-style problems that you can solve online, on your mobile device, on your computer, wherever you'd want to do. Deanna, tell me about it.
Yeah, so Question Bank Mastery Mode, our Question Bank is free for everyone year-round. But in preparation for October, we're releasing the questions that live in Mastery Mode, which is our paid subscription that you can add to the Question Bank. All of those questions are going to be available to all students. So it's going to double our question bank volume. It's going to be around 1,000 questions, reading, writing, and math. You'll be able to select different question types, and you'll be able to solve the questions as many times as you want. Like Joon said, the only thing you need to do is make an account on thehagwon.com. The only reason we ask you to make an account is so that you can save which questions you've solved, flagged, omitted, questions that you've gotten wrong that you can come back to and review in a more efficient way. So anybody who signs up with an email, with a valid email, you'll be able to solve 1,000-ish questions in preparation for October, which should be more than enough for these next 3 weeks.
Link in the description. But okay, let's talk about your reaction to the September test, because you actually had a takeaway that I found a little bit surprising, especially as someone who took my standardized testing when it was still on pen and paper. What'd you find?
Yeah, so this is something we lightly talked about in our August React video as well. But after an SAT runs, I'm always talking to real life students I have that I'm teaching in person, communities like Reddits and Discord channels, and kind of getting a feel for how students felt or what went wrong, what went on in general in a testing center. And compared to like 2024, 2023, it's a lot harder for students to ask another student, hey, did you have a question that was on golden retrievers? What did you get for the correct answer? Like, what did you pick as the answer for that question? Because a lot of students will be like, I didn't see a question on golden retrievers. Or you might say, I picked the answer choice on sample sizes, and you have no idea, you cannot remember seeing an answer choice on sample sizes. Now, this happens for two different reasons, and those are two big trends we've been seeing on the reading section on the SAT in 2025 specifically. One is, like we've talked about, the answer choices are getting super long, dense, and complicated. Now, what that means is lots of students are going to read an answer choice and walk away from it not remembering what they saw in the answer choices. You may not have the answer choices in the same order, not exactly in the same wording, or even in the same, kind of syntax or structure. So there's one reason you might not be able to compare what answer you picked with other students. The other thing is, a lot of what we've seen SAT do is they will write multiple versions of a question that are similar in structure and flow, but entirely different thematically. Now, what that means is essentially from an educator, from a teacher's point of view, 3 students may have solved the same question because it had the same flow. It was asking you to look at the same part in the passage and pick up one specific thing from the passage. But the first student may have read a passage about specific visual art, maybe a painting and a painter. SAT will not just change the name of the painting and the name of the painter and give you different versions of questions that way. But if the first student saw a question about a painting, the second student might see something about video art or some sort of installation art, and the third student might see that same question under the topic of like Baroque orchestral music, or other type of kind of instrumental music. So thematically, you will see 3 entirely different questions, but at the end of the day, they're the same question in structure and flow. They're kind of rewritten versions of each other. And so it's going to be really hard for you to leave a test center, call friends or text people or post on Reddit or somewhere else and ask, hey, did anybody else see this question? It's going to get much more difficult. One other trend that I have seen is, especially we saw this a lot in spring, is that SAT will take a similar thematic topic. So in this case, they might talk about one painting and a specific painter. In one test, it might come up as a purpose question. In another test, it might come up as a detailed question. Very, very similar passage, talking about the same context, but they'll just ask it in an entirely different question. So if you ask your friend, hey, did you see that question about that painting? Both of you might have seen that painting on your test, but those questions were entirely different and the answer choices would have been entirely different. So it's getting much more difficult for you to compare questions like that. Now, what does that mean in terms of what College Board is doing as they're writing these tests? What that really means is if College Board thinks that they can test an entire group of students and do a standardized test of their reading abilities, and it doesn't matter what theme you're getting, it means this test is no longer a pure reading comprehension test. Right? What that means is it doesn't matter whether you're reading a test about a passage about dark matter or plants or some sort of historical figure or event or a science experiment. It doesn't really matter anymore because it's not the comprehension of that topic that SAT is testing you on. Now, what does that mean for students? What this means is so many times, genuinely every month or anytime I get a new batch of students studying for the SAT, especially in summer, I hear so often students saying, okay, I can't solve these questions because I'm not a science student. I'm not a strong science student. So passages about microbiomes or dark matter, solar system, I can't do. Or students might tell me they're not a strong math person, so they can't solve table or graph questions or anything based on econ or finance-based passages they can't solve. What that means is that kind of barrier of content or context doesn't exist anymore on the SAT because it's not about comprehension of the topic, it's about skill set. The reason SAT is able to test students in this way, in entirely different thematic writing questions that are thematically different from each other, is because they're not asking you to understand the topic, they're asking you to find structure and map out a passage and find information in there. Really, the questions they're asking you is, if I give you a passage and I ask you a detail question, which means you have to find that detail quickly in the passage and understand that one sentence at incredible depth, can you do that? Or it might be, if I give you a long passage and I ask you to figure out the flow of it, like, are we beginning with agreeing with a topic and then disagreeing with it and then ending it in a question? Or is it a passage about introducing a person, place, or thing, adding some detail, and then ending with the significance or importance of it? Are you able to pick up on that in a very quick amount of time and tell me the general flow that you saw? These are the questions that SAT is asking you, and as you notice how I'm describing it and unpacking it, it has nothing to do with with the context of the passage. It doesn't have to do whether it's science-based. It doesn't matter whether it's arts, whether it's about literature. It really is just about understanding where people put things in a passage. Now, coming back, what does that mean for you as a student? It means to really excel on the reading section on SAT, you need to figure out what this skill set is and pick it up. Now, the good news is it's helpful if you've been a reader up to this point, but this skill set is something you can absolutely drill yourself and practice and pick up in a couple of months. You don't have to have been reading books your entire life to be really good at this in a short amount of time. It's really more about figuring out, okay, question wants me to know about function. What does that mean I'm looking for in a passage? And picking up those skills. So what that means for somebody like Joon and I, who took the long, old school pen and paper SAT, it's that we're no longer reading these 80 plus line passages. It's not about understanding what's actually going on in the passage at incredible depth. So I caution you, if you're reading any sort of community article, if you're reading any sort of advice or feedback by somebody on YouTube or some sort of Discord channel or on Reddit, and you have these like tutors or other educators who are telling you to go back to read The Economist or read Times or Harper's, read opinion articles to kind of help boost your general reading comprehension. Sure, those things are super helpful in your life, in the long run of your life as an adult, but in preparation for the SAT, it's not going to do you much good because that's not the skill set SAT is testing anymore on the digital SAT.
Yeah, so if you're asking around to see if you got the upper module, maybe not quite as reliable a marker as it used to be. That seems like a pretty good and accurate representation of the trends of what we're seeing in the past year. In terms of making predictions for October, which is something some of you guys requested, while we don't have a crystal ball and we can't tell you exactly what's going to come up, I think Deanna can tell you a little bit about what we've seen students miss and what we might see going into next month.
Yeah, so, I kind of shy away from the word predictions because we are trying to be a reliable source of information. And so nobody will ever be able to 100% predict what you will walk into a test center and see. But there are some really strong trends we've been noticing come up in 2025. I talked about a couple of those reading trends right now, but there are some of those for math as well. And there are a couple things that you can definitely expect to see in October if you did walk into that test center. The first is going to be, I've talked about this in August, we've talked about this in the spring, we talked about this last year, but math, the place it's going to get more difficult is geometry. And it's, I'm going to put in a small aside, because I get this question a lot, which is, students will solve Blue Book practice test questions and they'll, get like 720, 730 on math on the Blue Book practice test. They'll log into a test center and their score will dip to the 600s. Now, this is how I understand that. The Blue Book questions, like we've talked about before, is a really great presentation of the list of topics you can see on math. Now, what this means is SAT does not change the list of topics they test in math. It's the same concepts every single month. So Blue Book practice tests are a really, really great presentation of all of the different topics that you can see on the math section any given month. Now, if you're still missing questions on the Blue Book practice test, the unfortunate matter is the Blue Book practice questions are the most simple form of those concepts you will see on an SAT test. Now, what I mean by this is the most basic version of a exponential growth question. This is the most basic version of a trigonometry question that you will see on the SAT. When you walk into a test center, you will see those same concepts, but in a more elevated and sophisticated manner. It will just, the dial and the volume will just be turned up on those questions. It's the same concept, but they'll make it harder for you to figure out what information you're being given in this question and exactly what it is you're being asked to find or how you're supposed to begin solving this question. Those are the things that become more difficult on SAT math. It's the same concept. SAT cannot test you on a math concept that they haven't already listed on their website or is already part of the Blue Book practice test. What this means is if you are not getting all of the math questions right on the Blue Book practice test, you cannot expect to get 720 plus math or 700 plus really math on an actual test. It's not very likely to happen. The basis is you've mastered all of the Blue Book questions. Now, what this means is once you get all the concepts down, what you will see in the test center is, like I said, geometry questions that are just a lot wordier and longer, or like we've talked about on the Blue Book test, they'll give you a question with 2 parallel lines, 1 intersecting line. On the real SAT, you'll see like 2-3 pairs of parallel lines with multiple intersecting lines. So everything will just become a little more convoluted, a little more complicated. So that's something you will definitely see in October. The second thing we've definitely been seeing more of is difficult problem solving and data analysis questions, specifically statistics questions. Now, the way these gets difficult, because it's exactly like the geometry questions I just talked about. They cannot test you on other statistic topics that are not already present in the Blue Book practice test. So if you can solve the mean questions, the range questions, the standard deviation questions that are on the Educator Question Bank or Blue Book practice test, concept-wise, you're good to go. You don't need to take AP stats. You don't need to take regular stats at school. You're going to be fine. What instead is going to happen is that most of the SAT math questions that talk about statistics or problem solving and data analysis are rooted around a sort of context. They're going to talk about maybe there's like a lake and there's an exponential growth of bacteria there. They might talk to you about a specific experiment and look at sample size. They're going to build a word problem around this kind of real world context or experimental experiment content. And what they're going to do is reading the passage in a math question to figure out information and wade through all of that is going to get a lot denser and a lot harder and therefore a lot more time consuming. And that's the way Math Module 2 gets a lot harder. So make sure you're getting very efficient on reading math questions, picking up essential information, and then moving straight on to diving into solving the question. Even if you don't understand the question at 100%, try to pick up the minimum, the core of the question, and move on. Don't get so bogged down on reading the minutia of things on math. So that's going to be what I would expect to see in math for October 2025.
We've talked about vocabulary ad nauseum on this channel. When to start? The answer is now. How to do it? The answer is through our Vocability free resource online, link in description. You've noticed a change, or at least a different approach that the SAT has used when it comes to their vocabulary questions. I think you talked about how there's a replace sort of question that's been popping up.
Yeah. So definitely, we've talked about this in August. The vocab is, a lot, the vocab words that you're going to see have gotten more difficult in 2025. Starting spring 2025, vocab has gotten more difficult. We're at a point where you have to memorize vocab. Like Joon said, start now. We have an entire vocab curriculum on our website, Vocability. It is entirely free, just like the question bank. You just need an account. It's 1,000 plus words, flashcards, practice questions, Quizlets, and all. You will definitely continue to see difficult words. And what I mean by difficult is, words like meticulous, or we saw even precocious on September SAT and August SAT as well. Things like pernicious we saw earlier this year. Those words will definitely, that level of words will come back. So that's a mainstay. It's not going anywhere. But something we have seen more of, especially in fall of 2025, are replacing vocab questions. So we're seeing a lot of questions that are written in prose fiction with not a blank in the passage, but an underlined word, and they're asking you to replace that word. We've seen this. There are a couple examples of this in the Blue Book practice test that are a lot simpler. What we're seeing on the fall test is that the prose just becomes a little more difficult. There's a lot of classics. There are some historical documents you might see, some sort of more old English, maybe words being used in ways that we don't in our everyday, speech, just having conversational. We don't use it in that way in conversational English, but we do in written English. You'll see questions like that asking you to replace a word with, answer choices that are kind of a phrase or not a single synonym, but what may be like a short definition. And they'll ask you which of these answer choices is closest in meaning to how this word, the underlined word in the passage, is being used. So definitely be ready to see those kinds of questions. Definitely be ready to see more prose and fiction on the October SAT.
So when you're prepping for October or thinking about whether to take October or not, first of all, we have a whole video we've released on this channel talking about the intricacies and the nuances of when, if, should you take October, November, December, especially if you're a senior. We go over the college application process and how that impacts your decision making. Have a look, link in the description. Deanna, give me a brief summary for whether or not you should take October based on how you did in September.
Yeah, so what I will say is, seniors, go check out that previous video. We do a whole spiel on seniors. That will be more helpful. The rest of us, I will say, if you haven't been studying August and September, and you're not a senior, we don't need to take the October, because it's very likely that you will be too busy November and December to take a second or third test, because we have midterms, we have finals, we have extracurriculars. Things are going to be picking up and get busier as the semester progresses. You're not going to really be taking those tests it's not very likely you'll be walking into November, December. October is not a good time to start studying for those reasons if you're not a senior who needs test scores this semester. Now, the people I do think that could walk into October is if you have been studying in the summer and you did study for August or September, maybe both, but either or you studied for, and you did study during the summer, so you have a good foundation that is still here. You haven't let go of most things. You haven't forgotten the work you've done over the summer, and you do want to walk into one more test. You do need to take it again, especially if you're a student that studied in the summer. You have a reading or math score that you're quite happy with. You just need to raise your score on the other section. Definitely focus on that single section and walk into October while you're still riding this kind of wave of having studied and having this basic, the foundational information of SAT still in your system. My good point of, ballpark, if you haven't looked at SAT stuff for 6 weeks plus, probably you're gonna start very close from scratch. Things have rolled back, which is not bad, but October may not be the time for us to pick up and start anew. So if you've taken August or September, maybe you did well on one section, you didn't do so well on the other. October, great opportunity to focus on one. If you did study in the summer, especially my sophomores, if you started SAT this summer, you took a test this summer or this early fall, you didn't get any section score that you're kind of happy with, October is your last chance for this wave of studying you've done to at least get one section with like a desirable score. So you focus on the thing that you're good at, my sophomores. If you're a reading student, focus on reading. If you're a math student, focus on math, and try to get the score that you're looking for on that section this year. And then next spring or summer of junior year, come back and work on the other one. So try to walk away with at least one desirable section score in October.
Okay, I think that's it from us, Deanna. Thank you so much again for your unparalleled wisdom. I'll see you again in less than 3 weeks because of how crazy fall is when it comes to SAT test taking. Again, we have a whole video for that in the description. Have a look if you're still deciding whether or not November, October, December is good for you. And that's it for us. Hopefully you don't come back here in 3 weeks. Hopefully you're done with SAT then. But until then, happy studying and good luck, everyone. Bye.
Bye.